Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
So we're in Parshat Toldot. It's already interesting just even starting out because it says what? It says, Ve'ele Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham. These are the generations of Yitzchak, son of Abraham. And what's the very next thing it says? Abraham holid et Yitzchak. Usually in a genealogy, these are the Toldot of, and then of course the person you're talking about is the progenitor. So usually when you have Toldot, you go into the story of the patriarch, right, who begets everybody. But in this case, these are the generations of Yitzchak, son of Abraham. Avraham begat Yitzchak. So it's a little odd. The rabbis notice this. The rabbis notice that that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, and we can't have Torah not making sense, God forbid. And so they have this very elaborate explanation for why it is written like this. And the reason, they say, is because we have this story up here way before our events. We have this story of Sarah being taken into the harem of the king. Okay? So then, remember, Abraham's life is in danger. He claims that Sarah's his sister. The matriarchal tradition wants to say they are half-brother and sister, which was a tradition for the matriarchal culture. But whatever the case, she's taken into the harem. And so the rabbis want to say this is to be very, very clear that Avraham is the father of Yitzchak, not the king. Okay? So for the rabbis, it's making it incredibly clear that Yitzchak is, in fact, Avraham's son, in case we should think, God forbid, that Sarah was impregnated in the harem. And they go further in the Midrash and say that Avraham prayed to God because there could be doubt about who Sarah is pregnant by. And so he prays to God, and God makes Yitzchak look exactly like Avraham. That is what this verse is coming to teach us. Not only that he was for sure Abraham's son, but in the Midrash, he looks exactly like Avraham, so there can be no doubt as to his parentage. Okay. That's got to be a mixed blessing, right? To look exactly like one of your parents. Okay. So he's 40. He takes to wife Rivka, daughter of Betuel. We know this, right? We've seen this story. Yitzchak pleads because, of course, Rivka, being one of our matriarchs, has to experience barrenness and therefore kind of a miraculous pregnancy. That is the case for every one of our matriarchs. She experiences the state of barrenness. There's some kind of intervention by Yud He Vav He, and they conceive. So it is with Rivka. But her pregnancy is not easy. V'yitrotzetzu habanim b'kirba, and the children. It's this interesting reflexive verb, yitrotzetzu, from the verb larutz, to run. So something about running b'kirba, inside her, and she says, meaning to herself, if so, lama ze anochi, why am I? And we don't get a word there. So interpret that how you will. Why am I? Why me? We're not told why me what. But we covered this one year when we talked about Rivka being probably from the matriarchal tradition, being a priestess herself, because she has the capacity, the power to go inquire of the God. So we're not told how. We're not told that she goes to a priest. We're not told that she goes, because we don't have priests yet, obviously. But we don't we don't know what this means, but there's clearly a vestige of Rivka having the capacity to receive an omen from the divinity. In this case, because it's been taken over by the patriarchal tradition, of course, the divinity is Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. The Yahwist tradition has taken this story over. So, of course, she inquires of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. We don't know how. We're not told how. And she gets an answer from Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. We're not told how, again. But that 2 nations are in her belly. 2 separate peoples will issue from her. 1 people shall be mightier than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Okay, so here's where we get a tradition that Rivka it knows that her youngest twin, that the older twin, the firstborn, is going to serve the younger one. Okay, so this is something she's told by Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and behold, there were, of course, twins in there. Esau comes out red and hairy, and he's named Esau. And the people that come from him are called Edom. His brother emerged holding on to the heel of Esau. So a play on this word akev. The younger one comes out. Ochezet ba'akev Esau. So this play on the ayin here, the sounds of akev, Esau, and this play on Yaakov, right? So he comes out holding on to akev, the heel of Esau. But of course, his name is Yaakov. So all of this play, which you cannot miss in the Hebrew, Vayikra Shmo Yaakov, they call his name Yaakov. And Yitzchak was 60 years old when they were born. The boys grow up. Esau is a skillful hunter, a man of the outdoors, but Yaakov is a mild person. Yoshev Ohalim, literally a dweller in the tents. So, in the rabbinic tradition, he's a yeshiva bucher, and he's learning in the yeshiva all day. Of course, that's what this means. Yoshev Ohalim, he's sitting in the tent. What is he doing all day? Well, if you're from the rabbinic tradition, what's he doing all day? Well, of course, he's learning. He's learning Talmud all day. Very nice. Yitzchak, interesting, I didn't notice this until we did our study last week about love. Vaye'ehav Yitzchak et Esau. We always translate that as Yitzchak favored Esau, but really, what does Torah say? Vaye'ehav Yitzchak et Esau. We get told that Yitzchak loves Rivka last week, right? And Torah doesn't usually talk about love. Yitzchak loves Rivka and takes comfort in her after the death of his mother. And this week we get told, Ve'ye'ehav Yitzchak et Esau. So Yitzchak loves Rivka and Yitzchak loves Esau. So twice we get told about who Yitzchak loves. One time it's about partnership, it's about his wife. And this week, once we have kids on the scene, we're told he loves Yitzchak. Okay. And what are we told about Rivka? Who does Rivka love? Rivka ohevet Yaakov. She loves Yaakov. All right. So last week, we talked a lot about how love heals all of these breaches, and everybody seems kind of split off and alone, and it's a tragic family, and, that love is kind of an opportunity for us, and we talked a lot about what that can heal. And then this week, boom. Yitzchak loves Esau, Rivka loves Yaakov, and this week, love becomes a complicating factor that further fractures this family. I have never noticed that before. Okay, so I want to quickly go to remind us of this scene. So they're now old enough to be cooking and trusted alone over the stove, and Esau is out hunting, and he comes in famished, and Esau says to Yaakov, "Give me some of that red stuff to eat, ki ayef anochi, because I am," as my daughter would say when she was like 3 and 4, "disgusted." I am exhausted, ayef anochi, and Alkain Krashmo Edom. And so the name of the people that issue from him, therefore, are called Edom, because he wanted so badly the Adom, the red stuff, probably red lentils or something. Vayomer Yaakov, and Yaakov says, Mechira chayom et bechoratecha li. Yaakov says, sell me your birthright. Bechor, firstborn. Sell me the rights that you have being the firstborn son. All right, I want us to remember this before we go to the next place we're going to stop. So sell me your rights as the firstborn. And Esau says, Hine anochi holech lamut, behold, I am ready to die. So what good is the birthright to me? The right of firstbornness, what good is that to me if I'm gonna die? Okay. So Yaakov says, not so fast, right? Remember, this is also Yaakov who is gonna wrestle an angel, right? And the angel says, bless you, let me go, for the morning is coming. And what is Yaakov going to say to the angel? Not so fast. Not until you bless me. So it is here, rather than just hand Esau the stew, Yaakov, true to form, says, not so fast. Swear to me that you give up the right to the firstborn portion, the privileges of being firstborn. By Yaakov, and so he sold his birthright to Yaakov. Yaakov gave Esau bread and stew, via achol vayesh, he ate and he drank, vayakam vayelech, so look how fast this is all going. He ate, he drank, he got up, he went, and he spurned et ha-bechorah, the birthright. We could spend a lot of time on spurned. It's an interesting translation, but we're not gonna. Okay. So boom, 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 boom. The important thing being, he gave over to Yaakov the position of firstborn. Okay, I want us to hold on to that as we go into the next thing. But first, I want to hear from Betsy and from Alex.
I just had a question earlier when I was wondering why they translate love. I mean, that the word is clear. It's ahava. So why do they translate it as favored?
Yeah. I think because it's in comparison. Like Yitzchak loves Esau, Rivka loves Yaakov, meaning preferred.
But they could have said loves this one more, but they didn't. So it's just the word love. It's not preferred.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Okay, Alex?
Regardless if you sell someone your birthright, it doesn't take away that you're the firstborn. So help me understand that? It's like, okay, great, I bought it, but it doesn't matter because he's not the firstborn.
So that's kind of what I want to lean into a little bit, actually, this morning. What happens here? I think that's a good question, Alex. What actually happens here? And I've never read it the way, you know me, I'm always bringing you ways of reading it that are interesting to me because they're new and different. If you want to hear lots of traditional interpretations, there's lots of them out there. And I have 8 years of podcasts up, so you can listen to 8 other interpretations of this. But that's kind of the angle I want to look at, which is a little different than I've read before, which is something actually happens here. So Alex, I was born to Teresa and Wayne Cashow, and my birth certificate says baby girl Cashow. Then Howard and Jean Bernstein pick me up at the hospital, day 5, and take me home, and I am a foster child. Then, after a certain amount of time passes, I change by the courts from being baby girl Cashel officially to officially being Amy Rose Bernstein. What happened? I'm still born baby girl Cashel, but what happened? Anybody? And I'm not setting you up. I'm like serious. Like I think Alex's question is a good one. What actually happens here? What does Yaakov think is happening? What does the omnipotent author think is happening? What does Rivka find out happened?
Maybe multiple truths can happen at once. Like you're still, you are baby Cashel, and now you are Rabbi Amy Bernstein, but multiple can be, but it still can't diminish or take away who you are at birth.
Right. But it does do something, right? Like becoming Amy Rose Bernstein actually affected change for me in the world. It isn't just a name.
Well, just like we can have multiple aspects of our identity, we're not necessarily something fixed.
Correct.
Which contradicts what I'm saying.
I know, right? I know. I'm so happy that you got in that conundrum. So, because I think that's part of what's happening here. I think it's deeper than I have given it credit for before. And I'm just playing with it. I'm not suggesting this is how I would read it. I'm just saying it's an interesting take that we're going to see from Zornberg on what if something is really happening here? What if he's becoming Amy Rose Bernstein here? That there is a fundamental change in his status vis-a-vis the family and reality, right? I became the next of kin to two people that were biologically unrelated to me, right? Like that's kind of odd if you think about it, but that became my legal status in the world. I became legally the offspring of Jean and Howard Bernstein. I stood to inherit if they died, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So
it kind of reflects like that nature versus nurture thing.
Yeah.
Also.
It's very interesting. So if we hold this as a serious intention by the author to include this and take it really seriously on the part of Yaakov also, not just us and the omniscient narrator, but what if this is seriously something Yaakov now lives into in a different way than I've credited before? All right, David?
2 questions. I'm not completely sure I know what birthright means, but if it means that you are the primary heir of your parents' fortune, why would Esau give that up for bread and lentil stew? That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, good, David. The rabbis ask that same question. Like, that makes no sense. Some interpretations say he really thought he was dying, that maybe he's been hunting for 4 days and hasn't succeeded, and he's really at the edge of consciousness and like really does think he's close to death's door. Maybe he ate something bad in the field and he's really sick and like, he's been vomiting and whatever. Like, we're not told, but the rabbis want to say this is proof that Esau was not fit to be the Bechor, to be the firstborn, because he so easily gave up that status for some soup and bread. I don't know that I buy that interpretation. That's the rabbi's apologetics to make this whole thing about Yaakov inheriting be the patriarchy being, palatable. I don't know that I buy it. I think something's going on here that at least from Yaakov's perspective and possibly from Rebecca's, there is a change here. Yaakov now is legally the Bechor, the firstborn, with all of the rights that come with the status of Bechor, which in the ancient world was a double portion of the inheritance. Okay. Betsy, do you still have a question or?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I do. I don't really buy the latter explanation because like if Esau truly was Jacob's favorite, Isaac's favorite, if he was really hungry, why couldn't he go to his parents for food? Like, it doesn't make sense to me that he'd happen to be out in the field, whatever, with his brother, and he's starving, and he's willing to give all that up for some food. Like, where were his parents? Why didn't he go to them for?
Well, presumably, he and Yaakov are now providing the food. Like, there's something about Esau being a provider, right? Because we're going to see in the next scene that what's his chops?
He's a hunter. He's
right. So Yitzchak says, go bring game. So it doesn't appear that they go to Abraham and Rivka for game. It appears if they're going to eat meat, you know what I mean? Like, they're now the generation that provides it.
But he himself is the hunter and the provider of the meat. So Correct. Why does he have to go? Why is he saying he's starving and he has to beg his brother for something to eat?
We don't know. Torah doesn't tell us, but clearly he says, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
So give me, all right. So you can take it up with the author. I don't know. Like, but we're not told. That's why it's very confusing. Probably there is more to this story that we have lost.
It also makes him out to look like somewhat of a fool,
yes,
it makes him seem like he's not the bright one.
And that's the rabbi sees on that, right? They like that because they want to say Yaakov, this proves Yaakov's fitness for it and Esau's unfitness for it. All right. Alex and David, do you have something else to say, or are we?
Yes. Just that it seems to be a very cruel act on Jacob's part to exploit his brother's vulnerability like that. And, it doesn't cast him, I don't think, in a very good light.
Right. And if you recall what's going to happen to him, right? So he who essentially tricks Esau out of the birthright and takes advantage of him as he's faint or thinking he's going to die or whatever, right? What happens to Yaakov on the night of his wedding? Do you remember? He wakes up in the morning and, it's not Rachel in bed with me, right?
Wrong wife.
Lavan tricks him by bringing a veiled daughter of his, but not identifying which one.
Amy.
Right? Okay. So I think there's purposeful stuff about him being the trickster and then getting his comeuppance. Alex?
I'm sure there's many interpretations, but I have two questions. One is, what is that? What happened? The interpretations of him saying, I'm dying. I mean, like, we're all dying eventually, right? And two, maybe it's like, again, there's probably many interpretations of this. I'd love to hear some of like, well, I am the firstborn, so what difference does it make anyway in terms of like, I'm just taking it for granted. So why not? I'm hungry and maybe I'm acting not out of impulse, but indolence. I don't know. It's just, or it doesn't matter to me that much because this is just one of my privileges of being firstborn. So sure, I'll give it away. I don't know. What have been the interpretations on that?
There are lots of them. Like you said, if you go into Sepharia, which is what you always are looking at when you're looking at the text on the screen, if you go into Sepharia, you can click on a verse and you see what comes up on the right-hand side of the screen? Yes? Okay. Then all you have to do is go to commentary and click on any body, and it will give you commentary on that verse. Okay? So this is Rashi on his eyes were dim, right? Because I clicked on that verse. Go back, and you can go down to other commentary. Here's Forno, Abar Vernel, Al-Shich. All right? So you see all these commentaries? Then you can also go to, really? That verse, there's something about that in the Talmud. Look how many times that verse appears in the Midrash, 76 times. Okay, so that is one way for you to study in Sefaria interpretations of that verse. Okay, but let's just say that the rabbinic tradition in general likes to use it to say Esau did not deserve the birthright because he so easily gave it away. That's just kind of the overall. If you take the majority of interpretations, that's where they like to go. Yes, Rick.
I was just wondering if Esau, I just was going by his words, if he just hated his birthright in the first place and thought, I'll go for the immediate. I'm starving. I'll give up my material rights. I'll give up my birthright because I despise it anyway.
That the rabbis love that, right? The rabbis love that interpretation. He didn't want it anyway, right? Because all of it makes Yaakov look not as bad. All right. So let's hold on to that scene and that reality. Let's take it seriously. Let's just play with it. Let's just take it seriously that Yaakov really has purchased the right of the firstborn. Okay. How does that change reading this part of the story, which I find fascinating? Yitzchak is old, right? And his eyes have become cloudy of seeing. So probably we're talking cataracts, right? People whose eyes are milky and cloudy often have cataracts. And he calls to Esau, Beno Hagadol, his big son, Vayomer Elav, and says to him, Bni, my son. Vayomer Elav, Hineni. And he said to him, Hineni, here I am. Vayomer, and he said, Hinena zakanti lo yadati yom moti. Behold, I have become old, and I don't know when I might die. Ve'atta, and now get your hunting stuff and go out to the sadeh, to the field, and hunt me some game. Then prepare a dish for me that you know I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my innermost blessing before I die. What did Yaakov take from Esau that we just read about? What was that called? Business about being Bechor.
Chosen.
Bechor, first.
The firstborn.
No, that's a chet. This is a chaf. Bechor with a chaf is firstborn.
Firstborn.
What are we dealing with here? What are we dealing with what Yaakov wants to give Esau here? His innermost bracha. Okay. Switch the chaf and the resh, and we're dealing with the same three letters. Bechor and Baruch. Right? Yaakov purchased the Bechorness, and Yitzchak is about to bestow the Brachaness. Okay. So etymologically. So in some way, they are related, right? These terms have the same letters. You just flip the letters around. So they do have some kind of relationship to each other. Rivka hears Yitzchak saying this to Esau Beno, his son. Interesting. Doesn't say their son. Vayelech Esav hasadeh. So Esau goes out to the field to hunt game and to bring it home. And Rivka says to Yaakov, Bena, her son, right? So Esau, from her perspective, is identified as whose son? Yitzchak's. Rivka Amra El Yaakov Bna, she says to her son, Yaakov, Yo, I heard your father speaking to Esau, your brother, saying, bring me game that I can and prepare me the dish that you know I like, that I may bless you with Yud He, before Yud He Vav He, Lifnei Moti, before I die. So Rivka oversees this. She tells this to Yitzchak. What does she say next? Ve'ata, and now, B'ni. Let's watch what happens with B'ni. So we've got B'no, his son, B'na, her son, B'ni. And now she says, B'ni, my son. Listen to my voice. In the South, we say, listen up. Right? So she says, listen up to what I'm going to tell you to do. Go and get from the flock 2 kids, and I will make of them the dish your father likes. So we're going to put kid meat in there instead of wild game. Presumably, she thinks Yitzchak won't know the difference. That if it's lamb Rogan Josh or beef Rogan Josh, he's not going to be able to tell the difference, right? The curry does all the work. He's not going to be able to tell the difference. Okay. Take it to your father to eat, in order that what? That he may bless you before his death. Now, what I never noticed before till I read Zornberg is that, again, I read Zornberg again. You know I read Zornberg a lot. I never noticed Rivka doesn't say anything about pretending to be Esau, does she? I never noticed that before. Because we all know what happens. And so we assume that's what she's telling him. But it doesn't say that in the text. She just says, go get stuff. We're going to make the fancy dish. And you go in there and you have him bless you before he dies. Huh. Okay. I never noticed that. And Yaakov says to Rebekah, Imo, his mother, my brother Esau is a hairy guy, but I am smooth. If my father touches me, I will appear as if I'm trying to trick him, and I will bring on myself a curse, not a blessing. Okay. And his mother says, okay, if that happens, your curse be on me. You do as I say and go fetch the stuff for me. Okay. So he brought them to his mother, who prepared the dish that he likes. And Rebekah took the clothes of her son Esau and had her younger son put them on. We always assume this is a costume, that she's dressing him up as Esau. But possibly, I'm just saying, let's just play with it because it's fun. Because this is what we do. What if she's just putting on the ritual garments that are supposed to be worn for an occasion such as this? And until now, that has been Esau who's had that role. So she puts Yaakov. What if we take seriously that he's now the Bechor? What if he told her that? She's dressing him in what used to be Esau's clothes because Yaakov is now the Bechor and she wants him to get the bracha. The bracha belongs to the Bechor and that's Yaakov. Lest what he say come to pass that Isaac think he's trying to trick him, she makes it so that he won't feel that he is smooth, but in fact, hairy. Right? So that's what she uses the skins for. All right. And he's going to come to his father, and what is he going to say? Vayomer, and he says, Avi, my father. Hineni. Right? Here I am. Mi ata b'ni. Who are you, my son? I don't like this English. The English is reading something that's not here. Mi ata b'ni. Who are you, my son? What if this is not Isaac being confused? What if Isaac is asking something different than what's your name? Mi ata. Who are you? What if this is a deeper, bigger question? Vayomer Yaakov el Aviv, and Yaakov says to his father, Anochi Esav bechorecha. I am Esav, your firstborn. Okay? So get up, please. Eat of the stuff I've brought, and give me the blessing of your nefesh, of your deepest self. And Yitzchak says, El Beno, to his son. Who was his Beno before? Esau was identified as his son. Yaakov's identified as her son. Now Yitzchak says to his son, how did this happen so quickly that you've gone out and brought back, right, food? And we get the answer from Yitzchak, I get so confused with these names every year. Yaakov says to Yitzchak, God favored me with, God took care of it. Vayomer Yitzchak el Yaakov. Now Yitzchak says to Yaakov, come closer that I can feel you, Beni. Ha'ata ze Beni Esav imlo. To see if this is my son Esav or not. Vayigash Yaakov el Yitzchak. And Yaakov comes close to Yitzchak, Aviv, his father, and he feels him and says, the voice is the voice of Yaakov, the hands are the hands of Esav. Velo hikiro ki hayu yadav ki yidei Esav achiv seirit b'yivrachehu. He does not recognize him because his hands are hairy like those of his brother Esav, and so he blesses him. Vayomer ataz ze b'ni Esav. Vayomer ani. All right, the blessing is given. Why then does Yitzchak now ask, Ata ze b'ni Esav? What if it's not a question? Ata ze b'ni Esav. You are my son Esav. Vayomer. And he says, who says? Yaakov says, Ani. It is I. What if this is not a question? It's always read as a question. Why? Rick gets it. Rick gets it. What if this is not a question? Vayomer, it just says, and he says, Ata ze b'ni Esav. This is my son Esav. Vayomer, and he says, Ani, it is I. If we read it that way, what has just happened? He blesses him, and now, Ani, I, says Yaakov, am Esav. I am now the firstborn with the blessing, with the full rights of Amy Rose Bernstein. I am Esav. Because my birth certificate now says so. Right? Amy Rose Bernstein, people, was never born. She was never born. I took her identity because she couldn't get born. Because my mother couldn't have children. Neither could Rebecca. So, just saying. So, right, he takes Esav's identity. He took it by taking the Bechorness, the Bechor position, legitimately and takes it here by being able to acquire the bracha from his father, who then, after he blesses him, says, Vayomer atazeh b'ni Esav. This, you are my son Esav. And he answers, Ani, it is I. He says, let me eat of my son's game, that I may give you my innermost blessing. So he served him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. And Isaac says to him, come close and kiss me, my son. So he goes up to kiss him. He's approached now twice, close, right to Yitzchak. And he smelled his clothes, and he blessed him, saying, the smell of my son is like the smell of the fields that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh has blessed. So now he goes on to give him another bracha. May God give you of the dew of heaven and the fat of the earth, abundance of new grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow to you. You will be master over your brothers, because there's more than just him and Esav. There are other children of concubines. And let your mother's sons bow to you. Cursed be they who curse you, bless those who bless you. No sooner had Yaakov left the presence of his father Isaac, after Isaac had finished with this bracha, then his brother Esau comes back. He had prepared the dish as he said he would, and he says, let my father sit up and eat of his game. This seems to be a ritual statement, because Yaakov said the same thing. This must be a ritual meal for the giving of the ritual deathbed blessing, bestowing a certain status on one of the sons, the favored status. And he says, so sit up, please, and eat of this ritual meal, so that you can give me the blessing of your nefesh, the exact same words Yaakov said. So this must be some formulaic thingy. Vayomer lo, and he said to him, Vayomer lo Yitzchak aviv, and his father said to him, Mi ata, who are you? Vayomer ani bincha bechorcha Esav. I am your son. To Alex's point, bechorcha, your bechor. Esav. Well, that's where we have an issue now. Does he believe he's still the bechor? We don't know. But that's what he says. I'm your bechor. Alex made the point earlier, even if he sells the status, it doesn't change the fact that he came out of Rivka first. Maybe that's what he believes. Maybe he really thinks he's still the Bechor. Maybe he's tricking Yitzchak in not telling Yitzchak that he sold that status, that he gave that away to someone else who's now Amy Rose Bernstein. Not him. Okay, someone else is Esav now, not him. He sold that. In any case, Isaac is seriously, powerfully moved by this, because he's trembling. We don't know what that means. We don't know if he's angry. We don't know if he's shocked. We don't know. He just trembles, a violent trembling. Maybe he's having a seizure. We don't know. But he said, then who was it who brought me the game and I ate, right? Somebody came before you and I blessed him. He's got to stay blessed. You can't undo blessing in the ancient world. And when Esau heard these words, he bursts into tears and says, bless me too, Father. He's sobbing. And Yitzchak says, but your brother came with guile and took away your bracha. And then we see that Yitzchak then blesses his son with a bracha as well. Okay, I went way longer on that than I wanted to. I don't know how this happens every single time, but this time it's really bad. Okay, Don and then Betsy.
I'll be brief. There's lots to unpack here. But this is a question about what Amy Bernstein believes. And let's put aside that there's this giant conspiracy going on and that everyone is complicit within it. Do you, Amy, not believe that Rivka is a gigantic conspirator in the entire thing? And frankly, because that's what she wanted. She wanted number 2 to be number 1.
Yes, I think that's the pshat. I think that's kind of the straightforward reading. Yes, I think so. I want to play a little bit with Zornberg giving maybe Rivka a different motivation than just she wants it to be Yaakov. That maybe he's told her he bought the birthright from Esau, and let's hold on to that question, John. It's a good question. Hang on to it. Let's look at Zornberg, and then we'll see what we feel like our answer is. Betsy, and then Ben.
I'm stuck on how this could even happen. How Yitzhak could even. I mean, can't he distinguish the voices of his sons? Do they have identical voices?
He says the voice is the voice of Yaakov.
So how does he, but then he goes on to smell him and he feels him. And I mean, if he recognizes the voice, then how could he be taken in by this ruse?
Okay. So Betsy, you raise a question that the tradition raises over and over and over again. What is really happening here?
Yeah.
Is Isaac fooled or not? And if he's not fooled, why does he freak out at the end?
Yeah.
Is that a pretense? Is he pretending? You have to think he's pretending if he's not fooled.
Yeah.
And if he's fooled, what kind of an idiot is he?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, these are legit questions. These are the questions the tradition raises. We've studied them in years past. I want to focus on something a little else. Okay, so Ben, Robert, and Alex.
2 things I wanted to raise. One was to remember, all my life, Rivka was the trickster. Terrible Rivka, she tricked. Okay, but if you remember, she's also a prophet. She spoke to God. She heard what the story was. So she might feel responsible. Like, I have to make this right. What God told me what's going to happen. I have to put this in motion. So this was her way of putting it in motion. The other thing, in another class I'm taking, we're supposed to notice the difference in how the sons approach the father. Jacob says, please. Isaac does not. Jacob says, please. Esau does not. Esau just says, stand up so you can give me the blessing. Jacob says, please awaken so you can give me the blessing.
Yeah, so the rabbis are hungry, pardon the pun, for any way to excuse Rebecca and Yaakov. They'll seize on anything, including the word na, please. Right? This proves that Yaakov was more polite and deserved the blessing. Really? Because he said, please, he deserves the blessing. So, but yes, the rabbis seize on any opportunity to make it so that Rivka is doing the will of God, because God told her the older will serve the younger. And it's not untrue. That's there. It's why the story is fascinating. It's why we're at 1056 and not even at commentary yet, because it's complicated. And I think it's supposed to be. I actually don't think it's supposed to be straightforward. And the older I get, and the more I study it, the less straightforward I think it's supposed to be. Because I think our relationship to our next generation is complicated, right? Like even I swear there's a point to this, but we went to Shabbat on the Rocks. There was an hour of mingling beforehand, sitting down at a restaurant, and Eliana was sitting with the Scheibels and with Bert and with the Sinaikos, and Trisha came over to Eliana and said, "You go sit with with these people over here who are young adults. Go be at the young adult table. Like, help me out here. You're young and engaging, whatever. Go sit with the young people. That's where you belong. And Eliana said, I can't stand millennials. And this is where I want to be. I want to be with these people. Go away, leave me alone. Okay, so Ellie just went like, I can't stand millennials, to which Trisha said, excuse me, I am a millennial. And Eliana's like, well, not you, but most millennials. And Rebecca said, but I'm a millennial. And Ellie's like, well, obviously not y'all, but most millennials I can't stand. Okay, so what's happening is it's complicated, right? This next generation, there are complications that I think the text acknowledges that we want to eliminate and that we want to simplify. I think we want to know who's who knows who's who knows what's what, who loves who more. I'm not sure we're supposed to. I think maybe the text is this snarled and tangled because it's complicated. There are millennials we can't stand, and we go, see, millennials. Oh, I can't stand them. And then there's ones, well, not y'all. Y'all we like. You're different. And maybe it changes from week to week which parent, is drawn to or feels like is more suitable or feels like they get along better with or would be better in that position of running the family business. Maybe it changes. Maybe it's more complicated, right? And I'm just wondering, I'm reading it a little more complicated on purpose this year. Okay, Robert?
Well, I like that direction you were going. It's always amazed me that we have so many trickstering actions in our mythological texts, our source material. And it's extraordinary. And we see here, so why so much trickstering? And it seems to me, is it this? Is it related to the fact that what's also going on is the not the firstborn is the chosen and anointed one. And oh, by the way, Adonai's got something to do with that. Because it happens more than once. And the rabbis are struggling. I can understand that. You would think it's not nice to have your patriarchs be tricksters and whatever, but it's all over the place. You mentioned even, Leah and Rebecca are coming up. I mean, so I've always struggled with it. And all I can think is that it does have something very much to do with how complicated families are, and this simplicity of the firstborn being the one who should be the leader is something that needs to be challenged and was very normative at the time.
Yes. And so that's definitely part of this story is, and all the places where the younger will supplant the older, because it was the right of primogeniture in the ancient Near East, right, which means it was absolute that the firstborn inherited double. And so, and was the leader of the family.
And was a leader.
Blah, blah, blah. And our story is always about flipping that on its head, right? So definitely already, these are subversive stories in the neighborhood. Already we're a people whose founding stories are ones that turn what's normative on its head. I don't think that's an accident, right? I think this is something about how we understand ourselves. And I think it's deep. I think it runs really, really deep. Because by all intents and purposes, to your point, Robert, we really shouldn't be here. We have no business being here 3,000 years later after the destruction of the temple, right? We have no business speaking an ancient language that died out for 2,000 years and telling these stories and practicing traditions that go back this far. it shouldn't be in terms of what makes any sense in the world. But guess who we are? We're the people who resurrected a dead language 2,000 years later, right? And now have it on checkbooks in a place called Israel. Okay. All right. I swear to God, I'm going to get to Zornberg today. What if it kills me? We may go through meditation time. All right. Richard.
Thanks. Just quickly on this tricksterism theme, which I think actually is very relevant, because I think, all cultures have their tricksters in their mythology. And to some extent, and this goes also to your point, that we shouldn't be here given everything that's happened. What tricksters are agents of chaos. They disrupt what should be happening normally, right? And so maybe this is an opportunity to see that all kinds of things can end up happening if you sort of maintain hope in the bigger picture. Okay. It's sort of like you can't predict how you're going to get there, but you have hope that you will get there.
Good.
And so that's what sustains us for 3,000 years.
There you go. So Zornberg is going to do something like that in terms of how do we get there? All right, Alex?
I do think it is ridiculous that for the firstborn, perhaps they're incapable or they're not deft at certain things. That is a very ridiculous rule. So good for Torah. But I think what I wrestle with, like Jacob, is this deception and the not coming from, even despite you thinking God or whoever, or you think that you know the right thing, not coming from a place of moral integrity is what is why question here. And what does that mean what does it mean for us as a people?
Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So Alex, I'm not ignoring that. I want you to hold that as we go into Zornberg. Zornberg says, this suggests more than the confusion or doubt in Isaac's mind. The part we just said about, does he know it's Yaakov, does he not? It evokes the disappearance of the old self-constructed Jacob and the birth of a new hybrid being. To your question of integrity, Alex, this is Zornberg addressing that, essentially. Isaac perceives this being through all of his functioning senses and does not identify him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. In this condition of totally blurred identity, Isaac, not deceived by the hairy hands, but recognizing a reality beyond mere naming, Isaac blesses the nameless son, whose voice, touch, taste, and smell convince him of his authenticity. The paradox is, of course, immense. Jacob assumes disguise. He enters the world of seeming. He impersonates Esau. And yet his father, knowing him in a newly intimate mode, suggested by the recurrent word vayigash, to come close, and here are all the verses in which he comes close, composes an image of his nameless son that draws blessing from him. The fact is, moreover, that Jacob speaks an outright lie in answer to his father's question, "Who are you, my son?" He says, "I am Esau, your firstborn." There is, however, another possible reading. This rather audaciously takes Jacob's statement as representing a kind of truth, a truth of authenticity rather than of sincerity. Alex, to exactly your question, right? You could put put whatever word you want there, right? Okay. The Or HaChaim, for instance, suggests that since Yaakov has bought the birthright from Esau, he has acquired some essential virtue of Esau. He has become Esau in the birthright dimension. The Sfat Emet takes up the idea of impersonation as expressing the desire to expand the range of self. According to a famous rabbinic statement, it is sometimes possible to assume the part or the role of another person in Olam Haba, in the world to come. Jacob assumes the costume of Esau, meaning takes on what had been Esau's role. This involves Jacob in a new, complex, and dangerous sense of himself. No longer merely simple, which is how he's described in another place, sincere. He now carries all the explosive energies symbolized by hair, by strong limbs, right? Which has been to this point Esau. Now, good and evil are intermingled in him. He will be forever involved with the ambiguities of the world of seeming. The Sfat Emet concludes paradoxically, now that he is dressed in Esau's clothes, playing his role, it is written, and Isaac smelled his clothes and blessed him, and Yaakov spoke truth when he said, I am Esau, your firstborn, in the sense of inward selfhood and destiny. Jacob then is really Esau, and he lays claim to the perceived energies of his twin brother. Every profound spirit, says Nietzsche, needs a mask. Emerson similarly writes in his journal from 1841, many men can write better in a mask than for themselves. Trilling provocatively suggests the doctrine of masks proposes the intellectual value of the ironic posture. He points out that the Greek derivation of the word irony means a dissembler. Okay, and we're not going to go further. I stopped there. Okay, so to Richard's point, the trickster is the dissembler, the one who takes stuff apart, right? It starts to come apart when we go into the world of seeming. And what Zornberg is suggesting, because I read the rest of the chapter, what Zornberg is suggesting is, isn't it sometimes the only way we become someone other than who we are right now? The only way we can do that is by behaving as if. In other words, for a long time, people said rabbi, and I didn't turn around, right? Because it wasn't me. I had that title, but it wasn't me yet. But I called myself rabbi. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say they're sometimes the only way we actually become someone different, someone else, is by behaving as if. And then later, it becomes authentically us. So I guess, Alex, to your question, I would say Zornberg is suggesting there might be a level at which we can read this to say Jacob is being authentic in wanting to actually be the firstborn, the position of, the role in the family of Esau. So Esau as a title rather than as his identity. Yes, Richard, to your point. Yes. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the person you want to be in the world. Don't wait for the world to call you that. And I'm not reading this way to say this is the pshat. I'm not saying this is what it really means. I think it's an interesting way, one of the interesting ways to read this, that Rivka and Yaakov are reading Yaakov into the role that they know he should be playing, even though Yitzchak thinks Esau should be playing it. And guess what? Yaakov becomes the founder of the people Israel, not Esau. But Esau also becomes the father of peoples and of Edom, right? So it's not like because Yaakov takes this place in the family, so always listen to the mother. Because he takes this place in the family, Esau disappears. That's not true. Esau and Yitzchak, Esau and Yaakov bury Yitzchak together. It's just that it's that Yaakov and Rivka understand that it's Yaakov's the one who's supposed to be the inheritor of the Abrahamic covenantal relationship. And he is. And later he will become Israel, right? And we are the people, the descendants of Israel. So I guess what I want to say this year is, what does it mean for us to go ahead and live into whoever it is we're going to become that we don't feel like we are yet? And for me, it's pretty literal. Like, I'm someone, I always say, you all know this, I've said it a million times, I'm someone who's very attached to my stuff. Okay? Well, guess what? I don't have any stuff. Am I somebody who's attached to my stuff? I'm somebody who's attached to what I had, but that's not me anymore. I don't have stuff anymore. Who am I now? Well, I don't know. Because I'm not as attached to stuff. I'm not running out to buy a bunch of stuff. Part of it is because I don't have the house to put it in. But like, stuffness, my relationship to who I am, my identity as someone who loves my stuff has been challenged at the core. Now, I have a different relationship to stuff now. What do I do with that? How do I live into that? I don't know what to do with that. I don't know who that person is. That is very odd and very strange to me. And it feels weird to be living in her skin. And there's an opportunity there for me to do something with that, right? There's something there. I'm not sure what it is yet. I have to figure out how to be Esau. I don't know yet. Because I've been Yaakov all this time, right? I know this is tangled and gnarly. I'm sorry, but there is something profound here that Zornberg touches on that I want to work out about our identities and how they change. That's not always about the outside, right? Or it's about an inner change, an inner identity shift that brings blessing into the world. That like Richard said, we don't know how we're going to get there. We don't know how it's going to be. We don't know how that's going to go. We just have to live into what we think we're supposed to be. Hopefully, it'll work out. Here we are, 3,000 years later. So I guess it works on some level.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday Morning Torah Study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.